show up once in a while.
Thank you very much.
They're very busy.
Yes, welcome to TV Metro Mail. You are watching Chit Chat with Emam, and I am Emamul Haq, your host. Recently, I stepped into a world where time weaves tapestries of memories, and walls of a home holds the echoes of over 6 decades or over 65 years. I have heard stories from Gordon and Marion, who have been living in the neighborhood where I live over 65 years. They are living in the same house that they moved in 1958. They have shared their stories from childhood, their young age, their marriage, after marriage, the people in the community where they live in. If you want to watch more community stories, please click subscribe button and the bell icon, and let's do it together. Viewers, we have already put their stories, the first part of their stories, on our channel already, and today in the second part I had a very interesting conversation with this couple. Now let's watch the vibrant conversation that I had with Marion and Gordon. Thank you. So Gordon, you have been living here for quite a long time, right?
65 years. Well, I was born at the corner of Jones Avenue and Boltby. My dad had a grocery store there. I was told when I was born I was covered with eczema, I had whooping cough and scarlet fever, and the doctors told my mom, take them home because they're dying in the hospital with scarlet fever. Take them home, put them in the sun, and give them a spoonful of whiskey.
Okay.
And look what happened.
So do you remember the name of the hospital? Which hospital was that?
Hospital for Sick Children.
Wow.
Children's Hospital. It's the different location from where I was born. The original one was around the corner on College Street.
Okay.
From where they've built a new one, but the old one is still there. I don't recall anything about my childhood. I can remember the day my dad came home. We moved up to Harcourt Avenue at Jones and Danforth, and I can still remember the day my dad came home from work. He was working in a butcher shop. He came home early and he had had a heart attack and he died. And that's all I can recall of him. But my mom, to describe her, I would say she was a warhorse.
Okay.
She worked, she raised 5 children. If I got in trouble, and it was not my fault, one incident, I will mention one incident at school. When my dad died, my next brother assumed the responsibility of the house, and he was working 3 jobs, and he was only 12 years old. And he would fall asleep in school because he was getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to deliver papers, and the teacher had him expelled from Earl Grey School and sent to Jarvis School for Wayward Boys. That's what Jarvis Collegiate was called at the time. And that did not sit well with my mom. And I got the same teacher a couple of years later, and she dragged me up to the blackboard and asked me a music question. I can still see it, and I didn't know the answer, and she smacked me alongside the face. So I went home. I met my sister on the way home. She went to the same school. And she just looked at me and knew something was wrong. She says, "What's the matter?" And I said, "Old Lady Carter smacked me." And she said, "Don't tell Mom." Because I had no idea of what had gone on previously with my brother. So when I saw my mom coming along the street, coming home from one of her jobs, I ran along to meet her and I said, "Old Lady Carter smacked me." So she went back. She said, "I'm going back to school with you." And she went back to school with me. We got called down to the principal's office, and I can still see my mom sitting on one end of the desk, the teacher on the other end of the desk, and me in the middle on one side, and the principal on the other side opposite me. Rawson was his name.
Okay, and which year was that? Approximately?
Probably 1940, 44, 45. Just imagine. After my dad had died, I was 6. He died in 1940, so it was thereabouts. And anyway, my mom got up, and she had a purse with handles on it. And she called. Now my mom was a clean living lady. She never smoked. She never drank. She never cursed or swore. But she stood up with her purse and swung it with everything she had at that teacher. And I can still see her. And she called. She said, "You bitch." She said, "If you ever lay a hand on one of my kids again, I'll kill you." And the principal was standing in the middle trying to stop my mom's purse from hitting the teacher. And I remember that vividly, and I was only maybe 10 years old at the time.
Okay.
But that was my memory of my childhood. Other than that, of sleeping, my favorite pastime in the summer was sleeping, taking blankets and going and sleeping on the front veranda.
Okay, okay, not the southern, different place. Right?
Yeah, our house on Harcourt, because I had a chum down the street that I went to school with. The two of us would take turns. I would sleep on his veranda one night, and he would sleep on my veranda the next night.
That was the fun.
And the funny part about that story is, I still know that man.
Oh, okay,
I still know him. I still talk to him. He lives in Pickering.
Okay.
From way back in my childhood.
We would like to talk to him sometime as well. Marion, what about your childhood? Do you have any interesting stories and where you were born?
Yes, I was.
Did you grow up?
I was born downtown Toronto. And my mom had moved from out west. Her father and mother. My grandfather had come out to Canada when they would give you a piece of property to farm. And so
He came from where?
He came from England.
Okay.
And he took the farm over and was trying to farm it on his own and get some animals. And the people on the next farm introduced themselves, and they had brought out a sister. So he ended up marrying the sister of the people on the next farm. They had 3 children who all helped with the farm. And then I guess they finally decided that they were going to move to Toronto. So the oldest daughter, 16, came to Toronto, got a job, told the parents that they could come and they would find a place to live and a job, which they all came then. And my grandfather ended up getting a job with an ice cream company. And
Ice cream company, yeah.
And he worked there for years as a caretaker, but we were just tickled pink. Every time he would be going home, he would walk from Borden and Bloor back over to Avenue Road, but he always stopped at our house and brought ice cream. So we learned how to tell him that the ones we liked the best was the one on a stick that had ice cream and covered in chocolate. So that's what he would bring us. And we didn't have a fridge. So one time at the plant where he worked, the manager said, "We've got to get rid of this big old fridge. What can you do about it?" My grandfather said, "Well, I'll get rid of it for you." And he brought it to our house. We lived in a very small bungalow and rented it from a fella. And my grandfather said, "Well, we're going to have fun getting this fridge in," but he got a couple of fellas and put it in the kitchen, and it took up most of the room. But it gave us a fridge for the first time we'd had a fridge.
Wow.
And my grandfather said, "Well, when are you going to do something about the bathroom?" And my mom said, "Well, we can't do anything. We had a bathroom that was right in the kitchen beside the stove, and when you opened the door, we had a toilet that you had to push." Right?
Yeah.
And my grandfather said, "I don't like that." Well, we couldn't do anything about it. We were renting, and my mom put up with it for quite a while, and then finally somebody must have reported that we didn't have proper bathrooms.
Okay.
So there was 3 houses there that the owner owned, and the city came in and told him he had to redo all the bathrooms. So we ended up getting a bathroom at the back of our house, and we were there until Gord and I were going together for a few years. He was 18.
Which year you're talking about?
When did we meet?
Well, we got married in 57.
We went for 5 years.
Yeah, from 1952.
Yeah.
1952. I started at the telephone company in 19.
Got married in 1952, right?
Yes.
Yes, and we went together for 5 years before we married. And when we were married, I guess we were to move into this house when we were, what was that, 58.
1958.
58. And our daughter was going to be born that year. And we kept saying, well, we have to get in the house before she's born. But that didn't happen, so we ended up going to my mother's with all of our belongings until we could get in the house. And we were sitting in the living room one day, and I said, "I've got to go to the hospital. It's time to go to the hospital." And Gord was in the other room watching a football game, and he was just staring at this game, and he didn't want to go to the hospital.
Okay.
So that's where we ended up with the baby, and we went to my mom's until the house was finished, and we moved in here in 58, a week before Christmas, and we had no curtains, no carpets, no Christmas tree. And a friend of Gord's, I still remember the tree, he brought it home, and it looked like somebody had taken every second branch off of it. It was that poor a tree, but we put it in the window and put whatever we had on it as decorations. The baby wouldn't have known the difference, but we sat her on the floor, laid her on the floor beside the tree. That was her first Christmas.
Okay.
We went out, we hung around together for 5 years before we got married.
And in the meantime, my parents had moved from downtown up to Victoria Park and Ellesmere, and Gord still didn't have a car, so he would be taking me home all the way up there and then having to turn around and get the bus and go all the way back down to Paper Danforth. So he put up with that. Well, I remember having to start thinking about getting a dress to be married in, and I sewed, but I didn't think I could make a dress, so I found a person that would do it, and everybody was wearing long dresses, and I thought, if I bought a short dress, maybe I could wear it again. The money was not expensive, but I thought I could use the dress for other things. And then I thought, well, it doesn't look fancy enough, so then I went and bought some sheer and took it to the fella, and I says, make me a little skirt that goes over the dress, because the dress was just plain and straight. He says, oh, good idea. So that dress sat in the cupboard afterwards for years. And then when our daughter was maybe 4 or 5, we were going to take her to a Christmas do. Gord was always Santa Claus for the bell parties. And so I said, I'll make her this little pinafore to go over the red velvet dress that I had made her. So it looked really fancy. Okay, this was fine. Gord got his new uniform, his Santa Claus uniform. and he was big enough to look like Santa Claus. And when it came her time to go up, she went up there, got her gift, sat on his lap, and he said to her, "Hi,
Tub.
Tub."
That was her nickname.
Okay.
Because she was a chubby little girl. And so she got the gift and came back to me, and she says, "My daddy's up there."
My daddy's sitting there with mitts on.
So
She recognized me through the beard and everything.
yeah, so we had that for years, just talking about him going and being Santa Claus. And he used that uniform quite a lot because
Yeah.
the people around here, we'd made friends with different people. Everybody had children. And they said, "Could you bring a gift or something if I give you a bag? You know, could you bring it to the house, like in your costume?" So he did that for one fella. And the word got around that he had a uniform and he was Santa Claus. He was going down the other end of the subdivision to people. And here,
I was walking along, and I was just walking across the front lawns in the snow, and there was a young boy about your son's age
Okay.
staring out the window, and I can still picture him when I walked across his front lawn with this pillowcase of gifts over my shoulder in my kind of Santa Claus suit. He just put his finger out and his mouth open, and he just could not believe Santa Claus is on his front lawn.
Okay.
but he did that for quite a while because he had the uniform. And the girls, as our girls grew up, you know, they
were helpers.
Yeah, they just didn't do anything more. But Gord was so involved with the bell that they decided they would have picnics. And the girls thought, "Oh, that's great. Where are we going for a picnic?" "Over to the island." And they were so excited to go to the island because we had never been. And they said, "Have you been there, Mommy?" I said, "Yes, a long time ago." "Well, why?" I said, "Well, our class was finished school, and all the grade 8s decided we would go to the island and walk around or rent a bicycle." And we did that and came back. And as I was getting on the dock, this little puppy dog ran by. And he just stopped in front of me. And I picked him up and I looked around and there was a man unloading things. I said, "There's a puppy here. Does somebody belong to it? Or is it yours?" He says, "No, we don't know who it belongs to. Do you want it?" I said, "Well, yes." So I took it home to my mom and she said, "What'd you do?" I said, "The man said the puppy didn't belong there." So she said, "Well, what are you going to call him?" I said, "Lucky." So when I told my daughters that we would be going there for these picnics for the bell, "Oh, we're going to go where Mommy went." Okay, we went there. And what are we going to do there, Mommy? "We're going to watch Daddy. He's going to be in the tug-of-war." And Gord said, "Yes, I'm going to be in the tug-of-war at the very end. So that's where you look for me." And they said, "Why?" He says, "Because I'm the biggest guy."
When I was young,
Yeah. What was the perfect day look like?
I owned a horse when I was 15 years old. I bought a horse along with another friend of mine, and we used to go take turns going horseback riding, and that was my pride and joy until the poor beast got sick and we had to have him put down, and I couldn't stop crying. And the fellow that owned the stable where we had the horse, he brought out another horse. He says, "I'll give you this one for $50.
Okay.
And it was a magnificent, I can still remember her name was Duchess,
Duchess. Okay.
and I was about 15 years old at the time. We used to pay the board money for that horse. I had 2 paper routes, and I set up pins in a bowling alley after supper. Naturally, when I did all that work, I didn't do too well in school. So That was a thrill of a lifetime for me to have those two horses, not at the same time, but it was a thrill. I've still got a picture of me riding one of them somewhere here.
We would like to see those pictures later on sometime.
Okay.
Thank you. So Marion, what about you? So how do you like to describe your perfect day at your young age?
Well, we had three of us before the war. My mom had 3 children, and we had a family one side of it that had 9 children, and a family the other side who had 8 children. So we would just say to our mom, we're going outside. We never had to worry about who we were going to play with, but we never went out the front. We had a laneway behind us, and we would get into teams, and they would say, we're going to kick the can down the laneway. And we played that game, I don't know, every day, I think, until the winter came. And then all of these kids and we decided, well, we couldn't play out there. Nobody could come on our road because we had piles of snow that year. So we all decided to go get a shovel, and we dug trenches all through the snow, all the way up and down the street. And we just had so much fun because we could stay out on the road. Cars couldn't come. And one day there was a fella coming up the street, and he said, who did all of this? And he had a basket in his hand with the bread in it. And we kids were all there. Says, we did it. He says, well, I'm going to use it, because he couldn't get his cart up there. So he got out with his basket of bread and went up and down our pathways delivering his bread. And we thought, oh, well, we did a good job.
You said that what did you do for your living that time? You said you were working for Bill?
I worked for Bell. I worked at the tea eating company.
Yeah.
My mom got me taken out of school when I was 15, so I could help her with the house, to pay for the house. And my brother, closest to me, and me both had 3 jobs. I was giving my mom money each week when I was 11 years old. I was delivering newspapers and setting up pins in a bowling alley till I was 15, and then I worked down at the tea eating company till I was 18. And I have to tell you the funny little story.
Yeah.
I lost the Eatons used to pay you in cash in a little brown envelope, and I lost it before I gave her her board. So after that, every time I got paid, I would walk down Bay Street to where she was working and give her her board money. And she met me at the door, and I give her the money, and she said, the telephone company's across the street. Why don't you go and see if you can get a job there? They'll hire just about anybody. And when I said that at my retirement party, which I had all kinds of managers at that, it just brought the roof down. They just howled. They'll hire just about anybody. And I got a job with them when I was 18.
And it was which year?
1953.
Okay.
It was 1953 when I started the telephone company. And I didn't have any ambition to become a manager. I loved the job. I loved meeting people, going to houses and talking to people. Some of them, once in a while, it'd be a bad job or a tough job, but for the most part, I did residential work, and then they asked me to go down. I went to Montreal in 1967 and worked for 3.5 months at Expo.
Okay.
And then when I come back they sent me down to the Canadian National Exhibition. And I worked in there just strictly in the grounds for 23 years. They had the football team, the Toronto Argos, and in 1977 the Toronto Blue Jays started.
Okay.
And they have trade shows, what they call trade shows: boat show, sportsman show, home show. I could go on. And then those were the ones open to the public. There was other ones that were strictly business, not open to the public.
Well, I was 18, I guess, when I finally got a job at an office. It was called Williams & Wilson, and they handled huge machinery. I went there, and I went some other places, and I finally said, no, I think I'll go there. It was quite a ways from our house, but I had transportation on the streetcar, and I started in there just filing, and I moved up from filing to handling things that came through the customs department, and it was just a walk across the street to what's the big building down there?
The Flatiron Building?
No, where you have to go for the customs. Anyways, I went there with all the papers so that all the machinery could come through in the right order, and then we had all the right papers so that we could sell them. And they would bring them in, and I did that for a few years, and then I decided I was going to take some night school courses because I hadn't had a big education. So I went and took some business classes and learned shorthand and typing. And when I went back to the office a few years later, the office manager asked the department manager that I was in if I could move up. So I ended up being secretary to the office manager until I left to have my first child, which was 8 years, I believe.
I'm going to show you something here. This is one of my daughters.
Okay.
1050 Chum. They had a contest.
Okay.
They had a contest where in that time where they would open the phone book at random and just run their finger down and call that number.
Yeah. I remember those.
And if anybody answered and they knew the amount of money that was in the jackpot, they got it.
Okay.
So Susie was sitting doing her homework at the dining room table with Chum radio on in there, and she answered the phone and answered the thing, and she had the right amount, and she won $1,065.
Wow.
Yes. And just to show you what kind of a girl she was, she took, it was our anniversary in September, and I went down to the travel agency and booked a trip to the Bahama Islands for the four of us, the two girls and Marion and me. And they were thrilled. They wanted to know when I handed Marion the brochure, I said, "Happy anniversary." And the girls looked at it and said, "How many did you make it for?" And I said, 4.
And Diane says, "Oh, well, we have to go look for clothes." And Susie was the younger one. And Susie said, "Oh, we're going to do something about that."
She took everybody in the family out and bought them a new outfit to go on the holidays.
Out of her money from Chum.
From Chum. And then when we were going out the door to get out to the airport, she walked up and handed me $200 and said, this is to make sure we don't miss anything on our holidays. And she was 14 years old. No prompting on my part.
But they both got along so well as sisters. They still do everything together. Our oldest daughter is now executive chief operating officer for a freezer company,
Okay.
and our younger daughter drives handicapped children to school. So they both do good jobs, and they look after us.
When they were 15 years old, they worked at their cousin's farm.
Okay.
And they did such a job for him that the other farmers, the neighbors, were coming over wanting to trade their sons. You can have him and we'll take the girls. Because they were working harder than their sons.
Yeah.
They did just a super job for wherever they went. They followed me around. They did carpentry. They did plumbing. They did painting. They did.
You encourage them to.
Yes, and they did. If they would tackle any electrical job, as long as I was standing behind them.
Okay.
And they still do.
And they still do.
And they are taking good care of you, both of you.
Right now,
Our oldest daughter, Diane, is home now from New Zealand. So
Okay.
2 years ago, I had an accident and I got infection in my leg and it swelled up. Anyway, I ended up in the hospital for 5 weeks. And when I got out, I was going to the pharmacy to get a prescription, and my foot, I had slippers on because that's all I could get over the bandages. My foot slipped off the brake. Nothing happened, didn't hit anything, nobody hit me, but the writing was on the wall, so I went home and told Susie, sell your car, I'm going to give you mine. And she said, thank goodness. She said, we don't have to have the talk with you. That's what she said. She said, Dad, you drove me for the first 20 years, I'll drive you for the next 20.
Wow, good.
And she did that. Anytime we got to go to the doctors, do this, do that, she was there.
Wow.
yesterday she took us for blood work. She's not working right now with her job. School's closed, but she still is around to take us. And they have trailers that they go to in the summertime.
Yeah.
And so when they're away, they keep track of us.
Yeah, definitely, and you are blessed.
Yep.
And do you have a grandchild?
Oh,
Three. Okay. So,
Susie has 3.
yeah.
She's
Diane didn't marry.
Diane never married,
Okay.
but the 3 we have 2 girls and a boy. Robbie
Yeah.
is the boy. He's 34 years old. He is the lock master
Yeah.
for the Eaton Center,
Okay.
and Kelly is going to college to be a
Massage therapist.
massage therapist, and Melissa, she is the manager of a resort that has 85 trailers and a golf course on a lake in the Kawarthas. Show up once in a while.
Thank you very much.
They're very busy.
Yeah, what about you? Do you have any specific message for your grandchildren?
No, they've always been very nice and kind, and the only thing that they really, when they were younger, they used to wait for me to come because I would sit in a certain chair, and whenever I got there, there'd be something on the chair, clothing of some sort, and they'd say, Nana, something needs mending.
Okay.
So they've always just looked for Nana to do things, and now their mother does it all. She can sew and knit and do. We can't look after it as well as we used to, but I still like the flowers.
Yeah, but I'm just showing our audience that,
Yeah.
we are sitting at your backyard, and that's the backside of your house.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And we had that all done.
That was my retirement project,
Okay. Oh, you did that.
the deck.
Oh, great.
We built the deck
Well-maintained deck. Yeah.
in 1991.
Okay.
when I retired.
And then we had to have the doors changed because there was no doors there. They had to do the windows over.
It was closed. There was a wall, right?
There was small windows
Okay,
there.
a small window, and then you just made it.
Yeah.
They took them all out and made all those doors.
And this is the house where you have been living for over almost 65 years.
Over 65 years.
65 years.
Yeah.
And this is the neighborhood.
Yes, 1958.
And we have great neighbors both sides.
Yeah.
And across the street we have two neighbors that we speak to.
Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for your time.
No problem. No problem. Enjoyed doing it.
Okay, thank you.
And nice to meet you.
Oh, same here. Thank you.